Welcome to Healing Minds, Stories of Resiliency and Recovery, a conversation held at the intersection of substance abuse, mental health, and everyday living. Your hosts, Marc and Justin Wolf, bring both professional expertise and personal understanding to the table. So welcome to the conversation. Let's dive in.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Healing Minds, Stories of Recovery and Resiliency. I'm your host, Justin Wolf, joined as always by my co-host, Marc Regala. So, Marc, how you doing today, buddy?
Doing good. How about yourself?
Hanging in there. Can't believe this much time has passed through summer already. It's pretty wild.
August 1st around the corner. Kids are going back to school next month. Kind of hard to believe. We waited a long time to get nicer weather, and it seems like it's over like that, Justin.
It is. It's like all of a sudden, like my house is going to be a lot more empty. So it's going to be quiet. It's going to be weird. Real weird. No, but I think the topic we're talking about today kind of ties into just kind of, when you're kind of caught up in all that with all the kids' activities from like the summer or just all your competing demands, it can feel like it's never going to end. And so I feel like the topic we got today, when we talk about hope, like the idea that, hey, like this too shall pass. It will not always be like this. And I say that, and I also have numerous people tell me, like, just enjoy this. Just appreciate everything that's going on during this time and the stress that comes with it. Because it's like, hey, little people, little problems. Bigger kids, bigger issues. So, I think it's just, when we talk about this idea of hope, I think it's just really critical to kind of keep it in mind, because this is something, when we talk about it, it's just kind of thrown out there like you just got to have hope, have a belief. But it's not just a feeling. And I think sometimes like it gets misconstrued as just being a feeling, an idea, when it's actually fuel. This is something that kind of drives us, can really inspire us to take steps, to take action that we otherwise would not have taken if hope was not present. And so I think it's one of those things that is really incredible and really helps you kind of dive into the unknown with the belief and the idea that I'm taking this step with the understanding that I believe that this is going to be in my own best interest, even though I might not see it in this moment and I might not feel it at this time either. And what this can do is also help the brain heal and recover, because when we're choosing different behaviors, we're moving in a different direction. When our thinking is optimistic, positive, looking at what we can gain instead of focusing on what we've lost or mistakes that we've made, we're talking about changing our brain in those thought patterns, which can fuel neuroplasticity, which is critical because it screams, hey, like the brain can recover from what has occurred and what has happened. And hope can be fuel that helps kind of drive it in that direction. And so I think that is one of the biggest things that when we talk about, being successful in recovery or just having that willingness to take the first step, it's that idea of hope. And so that's what I thought we could really kind of spend our time diving into and talking about today, because I think it really is deserving of the attention, because it's one of those things that just the way that we interact with people, the words we choose to use can either inspire somebody and help, flicker that flame of hope for them, or it can be something that kind of douses it by the way that we're choosing to engage. And so I think when we're kind of talking about hope, I just kind of want to talk about first, before we kind of dive into how to kind of build it, fuel it, drive it, are some of those things that kind of get in the way of hope. And there's a lot of common challenges. And so, Marc, I just want to kind of hear your thoughts on this and get your feedback on what were some of those things that maybe you found in your own experience that kind of interfered in really kind of grasping a hold of hope?
To me, it was just all self-talk. The brain is, in my opinion, the most powerful organ in the body. The brain is the organ that's studied the most by scientists and doctors, and the brain is the organ that we know the least about. And I view it as almost like a computer, kind of garbage in, garbage out type thing. If you put the good in, you get good out. I mean, it's like the old saying, whether you believe you can or you believe you can't, you're right. So like with me, it was almost like self sabotage, if you will. Like everything was crumbling around me. I was going through the divorce. I was dealing with the major addiction, um, strained relationship with the kids, lost a job, had the car accident. We all know the story, right? Okay. It's like, where do I begin? It just seemed so daunting. It just seemed like it was going to be impossible, one, to just get sober and get through withdrawals off of the opiates and dealing with the alcohol issues and so forth. But then, dealing with the urges and craves, but then just the other chaos that you have to clean up afterwards. It's like, do you really, want to work that hard to get sober and then have to deal with this mess that you caused from your poor behavior, if you will. And, the brain was trying to convince me, or my thoughts were trying to convince me that it just wasn't worth it, that you can't do it, that you can't, stay sober, you can't get through the acute withdrawal syndrome or what have you. So for me, it was really important to surround myself with people that have lived it and have done it and have had just as chaotic lives as me. But they're years into it, and I saw that it was possible to regain your financial security back, to be able to get into another relationship or maybe another marriage again, to regain relationships with children, to be able to stay sober for a period of time. So, to me, being around those people helped a lot and gave some hope and gave some inspiration. There still was self doubt.
Mhm.
There was still, doubt in my mind of whether or not I thought I can do it. But, it was also just trying to control the thoughts and try to live in the moment and try to really embrace that one day at a time approach. I mean, they always talk about it being a 24-hour contract from 12:01 in the morning to midnight. Okay. That's what you have to control today. And then you wake up tomorrow morning, God willing, and then control tomorrow and so on and so on and so on. And really not try to have your head race or your brain race or get too far ahead of the game. 5 years into this, okay, I look back at it now and I've had these conversations with individuals this week, and I spoke at the hospital last night as well. And I had these conversations with patients last night. And I've said this before on the podcast, as daunting or as impossible that it seemed, okay? Um, well, let me backtrack a little bit. Getting sober, living a life of recovery was hard, okay? Hardest thing I ever did. However, I don't want my words to get mixed here. I thought it was impossible.
Mhm.
I thought it was so, I thought the task at large was going to be just something that I could not overcome. And you create this monster in your brain. So even though it was hard, even though it was difficult, even though it was a battle, it was nowhere near as difficult as I made it out in my head, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think when you're kind of saying that, it kind of speaks on just like that power that we can kind of find ourselves getting stuck in like these mental cycles back and forth. That our mind can kind of create these additional barriers that are on top of like this challenge that we're already facing. Because as you're talking, man, I'm just kind of like reminiscing in my own head about kind of what it was like after I had the traumatic brain injury and just kind of just didn't feel comfortable in my own skin and just kind of getting stuck in this place of just be the belief that, hey, I'm always going to be like this now.
Yeah,
It's never going to be any different. It's like, as no matter what I do, no matter the idea of like what I thought I was going to become, like that dream is dead. I am nowhere. I might as well let it all go and just kind of start lowering that bar for myself in terms of like my own expectations,
yeah,
because you kind of go from being like, I go from being like this person's like, I'm going to graduate college and go do this and do that. Like, I don't know. We'll figure it out, to like, oh my God, I can't even remember what was said to me the day before. I don't even recognize like people that I've known for years, like, or remember their names. And I'm trying to retain all this information to the point of like, well, I think I'm just going to be a food runner. I'm going to work at the restaurant. I'm going to be a food runner. I can do that. I at least know the table numbers. I can make that happen.
yeah,
And so that part just like feeds into like that hopelessness piece that can kind of just keep you kind of stuck. which is like the antithesis of hope, right? Like it's the idea like, hey, nothing's going to change, nothing's going to get better, and we can find ourselves getting stuck in these cycles that kind of fuel that. Like I know, man, I used to be in the spot where I'm like, I did this awesome thing to myself. It was incredible. It was like I'm going to compare myself to how I was before my accident, and I'm going to compare my personality, my memory, like just
Yeah,
every attribute that I could kind of put under a magnifying glass. Did that, and then I would do this incredible thing of being like, you know what? How close am I back to being that person? Because my idea was like, hey, I just got to get back to that guy. If I can get back to that guy, everything's going to be great, grand, wonderful, and this will be fine, right?
yeah,
And we all know what fine stands for. So we don't need me to elaborate there.
exactly.
So every time I fell into that trap of comparison, it was just reinforcing the idea that guess what? No matter if you think you're 60% back there, 80%, and like let's just call it what it is. Those numbers were garbage. They're arbitrary. There is no scientific data that was, validating it, whatever. So but each time I did that, right, it just emphasized the idea that I'm still not good enough. I'm nowhere near that. I'm still falling short. Even if that number was greater than the day before, didn't matter. It still felt and fueled that hopelessness with the idea that I can actually get back to functioning and being anywhere near the person that I was beforehand in terms of just those qualities and characteristics. And that's part of those like cycles that people can fall into that just kind
It's
of becomes like a hole that we get stuck in and we don't know how to claw our ways out of.
yeah, and it's like not only that, with your brain telling you it's impossible and so forth, but then you got all the people around you too.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he screwed up his life. Oh, he lost a good job. Oh, his wife left him. You know, and your brain's processing all this, all that negativity. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and needless to say, you got a lot of self doubt. You got a lot of self esteem issues. You have a lot of shame. You have a lot of guilt. And as we talked about before, you get to the point where you can't even look at the person in the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's like it's all for me. It was all about like self talk. I just texted somebody about this morning. I made that comment earlier about whether you can or whether you can't. When you think you can or think you can't, you're right. I always go back to like something that was always ingrained in my head that I remembered a lot when I was battling and when I was trying to get sober. And that's the one thing that my dad always told me from like when I was a little kid, like 5 or 6 years old. Mark, the word can't is not in the dictionary. The word can't is not in the dictionary. If you can vision it, you can make it happen. And I mean that's one thing that was ingrained in my mind since a little boy. And man, I kept thinking about that quote and picturing his face when he would tell me that when I was a little boy, all through the process of getting sober, and trying to get better mentally and trying to get back on my feet financially and just try to improve my overall life. But the thing about it is, you have to celebrate the, suc- the successes, as small as they are. Okay, you have to celebrate the wins. And for me personally, like I really, it, the only time I ever try to compare myself versus the old me is if somebody brings it up, and I do a pretty good job now of controlling those thoughts. But for me, I basically just said this dude is completely dead.
Mm-hmm.
It's like from this day, move July 17th, 2020. It's from this date moving forward is the new me, and I'm only going to the only comparison I'm going to make is me today versus yesterday. And I just want to focus on progress every single day. Tomorrow, I'm going to focus on me tomorrow versus today. I try to control those thoughts as best as I possibly can because the self talk, I mean, that can either drive your brain chemistry or, like you alluded to earlier, it can affect the brain chemistry negatively.
Absolutely. And I think you kind of hit on a big thing there where it's kind of like celebrating those wins. Because even though we might be like, I was supposed to be doing this from the get go, it's not that big of a deal. I should have been doing that all along. And I think it's some of those things that, we do a good job of like invalidating our own moves, our own choices, our own things that we do. Because we set this expectation for ourselves that it should have been like this all along. And the reality is it wasn't like that all along. So when we get back to doing what we would like to see ourselves doing, it's important to recognize that, acknowledge that, celebrate it. Because instead of just like kind of like cutting our knees down, be like, you know what, well, it's not good enough yet. It just kind of fuels that idea. It's like, I'm still not there. I'm still not there. Versus, hey, I've taken some pretty big steps and I'm moving towards living that life that I want to be living now. And so, how do I keep this momentum going? It's by acknowledging and validating the progress that's being made. And so, that's where I think those micro wins, those little, victories along the way, those are important to recognize. And sometimes we can lose sight of all the changes that have been made, especially when our mind does this awesome thing of just kind of like filtering things in and out. And just like we tend to, forget, just where we've came from and the progress that's been made. So it can be helpful for people to kind of have even like a hope journal, right? Kind of
Yeah.
recognizing, taking a moment to kind of reflect on those changes, on those strides that have been made, and writing it down, because it can be a good way to kind of like reference back and see just how far one has come from where they were. And
Yeah.
that in of itself can be empowering and really kind of fuel that idea that's like, hey, I am capable of doing something different. No matter what my mind says to me right now, like I got evidence that shows like I'm capable of making these changes.
100%. As much as I bash social media, that kind of gives you a good perspective of things. That
Mhm.
Facebook memories. One, a picture might pop up from 8, 9, or 10 years ago. That's not the most, not the best picture.
Yeah, not flattering. Is that the word you're looking for?
Right now. And you look at that picture, like, man, why the hell would I allow that to be posted on Facebook? And then you look at yourself now, and you're like, holy crap, man, I came a long way. But it's not even that. It's like even like the content that I was posting. I mean, you could just tell that. I mean, there was something going on the inside. It wasn't the most positive posts. It wasn't the most inspiring posts. Like you can just tell when I look at my memories, I was down and out. You know, there was definitely something going on the inside. And then I look at like my post that I post now, okay, or let's just say within the last 5 years on the memories versus 8, 9 years ago. It's all positive. It's all recovery. It's about healthy relationships. It's like a complete 180. I mean, none of that when I was battling. So that's kind of a reminder as well. I mean, I've actually recognized that, and sometimes, and I usually check my memories when I'm taking a break from my workout in the morning, and when something old pops up, sometimes I laugh out loud or I just smirk because I'm like, man, that was a long time ago, and I was in a different spot compared to where I'm at right now.
Absolutely. And I think that's the part where you kind of use that hope to kind of fuel the changes that are being made. You're able to kind of just look at that stuff and it doesn't kind of pull you back into kind of like that old cycle, the old pattern. You can just kind of look at it, recognize and acknowledge just, hey, look how far I've come. Look at the
Yeah,
growth that's occurred here. I think that's huge, right? Because you look at this and a lot of times people are like, I just need to kind of, like when it comes to making any kind of change, doing something different, people are like, I just need to kind of like get down and do it. I need to kind of like push myself there, right? And
yeah,
I feel like one of the most powerful, supports when it comes to having that belief in oneself is having a sense of community and having people in your corner that are kind of relaying, echoing a lot of those same messages, that are able to kind of pick you up on those days where you feel like you can't walk. They're like, hey, man, I got you today.
yeah.
And having the ability to trust that other people have your best interest in mind too, and they're wanting you to succeed goes a really long way on this journey towards really self-fulfillment here.
That's really important. Your circle is very, very important in early recovery and to maintain your sobriety and recovery. If you got people that are trying to encourage you to go out and not necessarily healthy environments based off of your past issues and so forth, you got to look yourself in the mirror and ask, do they really got your best interest in mind, or are they a true friend,
Mm-hmm.
or are they just an acquaintance? Because your true friends are going to be the ones to hold you accountable to make you better. Your true friends are going to be there when you're going through a challenging time in life to check up on you. Your true friends are going to make sure that you're on point with your daily activities, whether it's going to the gym or diet or whatever it might be. I mean, I have a group text. We call it the old man support group. Okay, somebody named it that, but we're all 50 and up, and that's what people do, man. They check in, or if somebody's going through a situation with visitation with their child, they'll put it out there, and we'll all have their back and give them words of encouragement, stuff like that. It's how it's supposed to be,
Mhm.
I mean, life's not easy. You have to have that support, and you have to have the right support. Like I said, ones that are going to inspire you and make you healthier, and hopefully, by you doing the right thing, you're inspiring them too. I mean, it's a give take.
Right. And I think it's kind of like that inner dialogue that starts to change too. Because sometimes when you're kind of caught up in the midst of all this, you don't feel like you're worth supporting. You don't feel like you deserve it. And I think that's part of like the script flipping where it's like, you know what, I deserve this just like anybody else. And I'm going to allow these people to show up in my life and be present for me in those moments that I really need them. And that trust with other people and allowing ourselves to kind of co-regulate with another person so that we don't have to try and deal with everything internally by ourselves, because sometimes our best solutions are not the most effective. We can find another avenue through that period of darkness that may emerge.
Yeah. And I'm always, so, obviously in the AA world, they talk about connecting with your higher power. They talk about your spiritual awakening, things like that. Okay. I'm very cognizant of that now. I never really paid attention to that stuff before, but I'm very cognizant of it now because there's times I'll pick up the phone and call a buddy, and he's like, "Oh, thank God you called, man. I got this going on right now, and I was just thinking about, putting a text out there or giving you a call." Or, I might be going through a little bit of a hard time with something going on or whatever, and then all of a sudden, boom, phone rings, and it couldn't have been the most perfect person to call at that particular time.
Mm.
It happens quite a bit. I mean, it really does. More often than I ever could have imagined. And I'm sure that there was some of that stuff going on before, but I pay attention to those signs or be cognizant of that now as well.
Yeah, you're definitely open to receiving that message now, and you can see it.
Exactly. Or just certain people you meet. Like just last night, I was at the hospital and I was sharing a story about an individual that was on our podcast. So he talked about this publicly, so I really wasn't violating any privacy, just a little bit about his story. And there's a patient in there and go, "Are you talking about so and so?" And I look at him and I'm like, yeah. Oh, that's, 6 degrees of separation.
Yeah.
You know, I
Right.
mean, me, you know, there's a reason why I was there speaking at the hospital with that group, and he was there as a patient at that particular time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, and I think, that's one of the things we're kind of going through this. We're talking about like all like just like the power of just being able to kind of share stories, connect with other people, and really kind of help support people moving down that journey, as well as helping support ourselves, kind of walking that path. And I
Yeah,
think it's always important to kind of recall that, hey, like this isn't going to be a perfect journey. It's just as long as we kind of figure out how we can pick ourselves up when we fall down and keep ourselves moving forward. That's incredibly important, especially when we realize that, hey, you know what, like that light of hope, it's going to flicker, and that's okay if it flickers. The real important thing is that we got to make sure that it just doesn't go out.
we were chit-chatting about baseball before we started this podcast, and I actually use this analogy quite a bit. It's kind of like a baseball team that's deep into the game, maybe the eighth or ninth inning, and they're getting shut out 1-0, 2-0, and the opposing team is throwing a no hitter against you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then all of a sudden, to break up the no hitter, uh, one of your teammates gets a swinging bunt or an
Oh,
infield single to break up the no hitter, right? And then all of a sudden, the batter comes up and then bang, hits a gap at the right center
yeah.
field. The next batter comes up, boom, base hit the left field. There's an old saying in baseball, hitting is contagious.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It just took one little lucky break to break up that no hitter to give the next batter the mindset and the confidence that he can get a hit too, even though this pitcher was so dominant the whole baseball game, right? And next thing you know, not only is the no hitter broken up, but you're winning the game going into the bottom of the ninth. I mean, that's the analogy that I give. Just
Yeah.
whether it's exercise, whether it's diet, whether it's sobriety. Sometimes it just takes one person Start making those changes, and it becomes contagious with the people in your circle around you. And
Right.
that's what we aspire, because now you're bringing out the best in others too.
See, Mark, of all the analogies you had to use that one. And as a former pitcher, that just like irritates me. I'm like, oh, a swinging bunt. Like, that's golden rule. Like, you don't break that golden. Like, I hope the would call him out just for that purpose.
I
But
purposely picked that analogy for all the time they pick on me about my size of my shirts and all that stuff. So
yeah,
I
so when you mentioned like those,
wasn't even
yeah,
thinking about the fact that you were a pitcher. It's just an
yeah,
analogy I use, man. That's all.
yeah. So when you were talking about those unflattering shirts from the past or those photos, it was you wearing a size large, not a medium, right?
Shit. Back then, it probably was double extra large. You still see my big old belly there, man. It was not a pretty sight, man. I was the king of White Castles and Diet Pepsis and vodka and pills, man. I mean, it was not pretty at all. I look like a completely different human being now than I did when I was 39, 40, or 41 years old.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, man, I've enjoyed this conversation about hope. I think we've covered a lot here today, just about kind of like how to kind of cultivate, right? How to kind of fuel it. What are some of those things that might show up and get in the way, and how really like that sense of community is really critical and important. Because as badly as we may want these things, like we can't walk this path alone, and really learning to trust other people and allowing other people to show up and support us at our needed times is really a critical component of this too. So,
Absolutely.
anything else, Mark, you want to kind of throw out there before we sign off?
No, just for the kids that are going to be going back to school here over the next few weeks. Successful school year. Your kids a successful school year. And let's enjoy the rest of the summer. That's all.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in today. These episodes air on the 1st and the 15th. So if there's anything that you would like to hear Mark or I dive into, or actually be both of us diving in, I don't know why it'd be either or. So feel free. Like, I just want a Mark episode. That's all I want. Feel free to reach out to us, let us know. And until next episode, we look forward to you joining us, and thank you for being here. Goodbye, everybody.
Thanks for joining us today on Healing Minds, Stories of Resiliency and Recovery. If you're on the journey to find guidance and insights, subscribe now wherever you find your podcasts. Healing Minds, Stories of Resiliency and Recovery is an educational resource, not a substitute for medical or therapeutic advice. The opinions expressed by the hosts and their guests are not necessarily those of NAMI DuPage. Go to namidupage.org/podcast for links to past episodes, show notes, and to submit a question or topic ideas for a future episode. Until next time, be well.